Here is what the backyard birding industry has been telling you about blue jays, distilled into its simplest form. Buy the right product. Put it in a visible spot. The birds will come. It is a clean, commercially convenient narrative, and it has been selling seed bags and hanging feeders for decades. There is only one substantial problem with it. For blue jays specifically, almost none of it is accurate. And the harder you follow that advice, the more reliably your yard will continue to fail at attracting the one species you were supposedly buying for. The myth is not malicious. It is simply the natural result of applying a general mass market framework to a bird with specific, exacting, and non-negotiable biological requirements. Let's go through those myths directly, one by one, and put the actual science alongside each one. Because once you can see the full picture clearly, the path forward becomes obvious. Myth 1. The right seed mix is the key to attracting blue jays. Walk into any gardening or birding retailer, and you will see bags of seed product with blue jays printed prominently on the front, usually alongside marketing language about corvid attraction or premium blends designed for North American songbirds. The implication is that the contents of the bag are what determines which birds show up. This is true for some species. For blue jays, it is largely irrelevant, and understanding why requires understanding what a blue jay actually does with food. The reality is that blue jays do not primarily eat at a food source. They cache. They are driven by an evolutionary imperative to collect, evaluate, and bury food during autumn for later retrieval during winter scarcity. And the way they evaluate food requires a specific physical interaction with individual food items. The bird picks up an item, shakes it laterally to assess the weight distribution of the contents relative to the casing, and uses that sensory data to determine whether the item is worth carrying to a cache site. This process requires food items with meaningful individual mass and physical integrity, specifically food items that still have their shells or husks intact, that provide real weight data when shaken, and that are large enough to handle deliberately in the bill. Whole, raw peanuts in the shell and unhulled sunflower seeds pass this test. Cracked corn, hulled sunflower chips, millet, and the mixed filler seeds that constitute most commercial blends do not. There is an additional reason why processed and salted peanuts, which are the most common commercially available variety, represent a specific problem beyond their lack of shell integrity. Sodium at the concentrations found in salted nuts is genuinely harmful to birds over time, because avian kidney physiology is not designed to process dietary salt at levels that mammalian systems handle without difficulty. Regular consumption of salted food introduces a dehydration and organ stress risk that has no nutritional upside. A blue jay eating salted peanuts from a feeder is receiving a caloric input while simultaneously accumulating a physiological cost that erodes the net benefit. Raw, unsalted, whole peanuts in the shell cost comparably to salted commercial varieties and deliver none of this risk while providing everything the bird actually needs from the food item. Myth 2. The placement of your feeder is mostly a matter of aesthetics and visibility. Most backyard birding advice recommends placing feeders in open, visible areas so that birds can find them easily from above. For many species, this guidance is sufficient. For blue jays, feeder placement involves a second dimension that this advice does not address at all: the structural stability of whatever the food is sitting on, and whether that stability is compatible with the physical routine the bird needs to run in order to feed properly. The reality here connects directly to the caching behavior described above. Shaking a food item to assess its weight and density is a physical action that requires a stable base. A blue jay performing this assessment on a hanging tube feeder that sways with every movement is working with degraded sensory data, because the platform itself is introducing movement that the bird cannot distinguish from the movement it is creating by shaking the food. Beyond the assessment problem, a swaying surface creates a flight safety problem. Blue jays are hunted by Cooper's hawks and sharp-shinned hawks, both of which are fast, highly maneuverable raptors that pursue corvids with serious intent. A blue jay at a food source is always simultaneously monitoring its escape options, and its primary escape mechanism is a fast, directional launch from whatever surface it is standing on. A surface that moves unpredictably under its weight cannot serve as a reliable launch platform, and the bird's nervous system responds to this by elevating its threat perception. The feeding location reads as dangerous, and repeated exposure to this experience results in the bird routing around your yard, rather than incorporating it into its daily circuit. A wide, flat, completely fixed platform, mounted to a post or secured to a fence rail so that nothing moves when a bird lands on it, solves both the assessment problem and the safety problem at once. The food on that platform is secondary. The stability of the surface is primary. Myth 3. A bird bath is a bird bath, and any water source will attract any bird equally. This myth is broadly true for small, highly adaptable songbirds that tolerate a wide range of environmental conditions out of necessity. For blue jays, water placement and water quality send specific signals that the bird reads before committing to use, and getting either one wrong results in consistent avoidance that looks inexplicable from the outside, but follows precise biological logic. The reality is that still, warm, stagnant water communicates danger to corvids. In the natural world, standing water that does not move is associated with elevated bacterial concentrations, algae bloom risk, and the kind of predictable, unchanging environment that ground predators exploit by waiting at regular animal watering points. Blue jays have evolutionary wiring that interprets these conditions as threat signals and routes them toward moving water instead. Moving water signals freshness, oxygenation, and renewal, and it carries a second advantage that still water does not: sound. A blue jay flying its territorial patrol at height cannot see a still bird bath with any more reliability than it can see any other pale, flat surface in a suburban yard. A bird bath with a drip running into it is producing a continuous auditory signal that travels in all directions and can be detected by a corvid from a distance that crosses multiple property lines. The drip is not decorative. It is a navigational beacon, and without it, your water source is largely invisible to the birds you want to attract. Placement matters for water in the same way it matters for food, and the same open area, clear sightline requirement applies. A bath tucked against a dense hedge fails the blue jay's threat assessment before the bird ever reaches the water. Myth 4. Once you have the feeder and the water right, you have done everything you can do to attract blue jays to your yard. This myth represents the most significant omission in most backyard birding advice, because it stops the story at the level of manufactured inputs and ignores the ecological dimension entirely. The truth is that a feeder and a bird bath can bring a blue jay to your yard for a visit. Only the right living plants can keep it there across seasons and generate the kind of territorial commitment that results in the same birds and their offspring returning to your property year after year. The reality of what blue jays need from the plant life in a yard changes completely depending on the season, and meeting that changing need requires native species that commercial products simply cannot substitute for. In autumn, the dominant need is calorie-dense, cashable hard mast, specifically acorns from oaks in the genus Quercus and nuts from hickory trees. These are not incidental food items. They are the primary resource that triggers caching behavior at the scale and intensity that a blue jay's winter survival depends on. And a yard with a mature oak or hickory is a yard that a blue jay has a biological reason to commit to, far beyond what any filled feeder can generate. A single productive mature oak can provide tens of thousands of acorns in a good year, a volume that pulls blue jays from a wide surrounding area and keeps them working the property for weeks. The territorial memory this builds is not short-lived. Blue jays live for 7 to 10 years in the wild, and a bird that discovers a productive oak in its first autumn will return to that oak every subsequent autumn for the remainder of its life, because its memory of the resource is updated and reinforced every successful visit. This is the mechanism that underlies the phrase, "Keep blue jays coming back," that appears in the title of this video. It is not a marketing promise. It is a description of what documented corvid memory and territorial behavior actually produce when the ecological conditions are right. The gular pouch, an expandable elastic sac in the throat that allows the bird to carry multiple acorns simultaneously stacked against each other, is the anatomical feature that makes this intensive caching activity efficient. And watching a blue jay load its gular pouch and fly to a cache site and return for another load is one of the clearest illustrations of how deeply the relationship between this bird and its preferred native trees has been shaped by coevolution. The ecological consequence of this behavior extends beyond any individual yard. Ornithologists studying post-glacial forest expansion in eastern North America have concluded that blue jays were a primary mechanism by which oak trees spread northward and westward following the last ice age, because a bird that can carry 5 acorns per trip and makes hundreds of trips per season, burying each one at a depth and location optimal for germination, is far more effective at dispersing heavy, non-flying seeds than any wind or gravity-based mechanism could be. The forests that define Eastern American landscapes are, in a measurable sense, the legacy of millions of blue jays doing in past centuries exactly what they are doing in yards and parks today. For the deep winter months, native dogwood and American holly shrubs provide the fat-rich, persistent fruit that carries blue jays through the weeks when cached food is running low and every other berry source in the landscape has been stripped bare. In spring, native flowering plants and native sunflowers support the insect communities that nesting blue jays depend on to feed their chicks, because nestlings require animal protein in a form that seeds cannot provide. These seasonal layers, each one addressed by a specific native plant, form a year-round ecological system that no combination of commercial products can replicate. The phrase "old garden secret" is, like every similar phrase in backyard wildlife content, a marketing construction. What is old is the biology itself, the coevolutionary relationships, the caching imperative, the lipid storage strategy, the acoustic navigation toward moving water. Traditional farming communities aligned with these biological facts accidentally, because agricultural land management happened to produce the physical and ecological conditions that this bird has always been selecting for. You do not need a farm. You need to provide what the farm provided by accident, on purpose, in whatever space you have. A fixed platform with whole, raw food, a drip-equipped bath in open space, a dogwood, a holly, a patch of native sunflowers. These are the components of a system that has been working for as long as blue jays have been flying over the eastern half of this continent. The old garden secret was never hidden. It just required understanding the bird well enough to see it clearly. If you want to keep exploring what that system looks like in practice, one element at a time, let us know in the comments which piece of this you want examined in more depth. And if this gave you a clearer picture of what your yard could become, give the video a like and subscribe, because there is a great deal more of this coming.